Bureau. Jon Machota covers the Dallas Cowboys for The Athletic. He's on your radio right now. Lest you were curious as to what Dallas's plans were in the draft, it was defense, defense, defense. First pick, Micah Parsons, and then they go corner, and then defensive tackle, and then defensive end, and then corner, and then inside linebacker, and then finally go to some offensive guys with fourth and fifth round picks. John, was this the right strategy for Dallas? Defense, and more defense?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it, just how bad their defense was last year. I mean, it's never been a strength over the last decade. It's been solid to above average for most of that time, and if anything, that's what's kept them back from going a little bit further than what they had wanted in the playoffs and what ultimately got Mike McCarthy hired as head coach. And then they, last year, just take a complete step back, and they got rid of, obviously, Mike Nolan after 1 year as defensive coordinator, but let's not act like he had a bunch of playmakers on that side of the ball. And so this was definitely the right route. I know that they would prefer to have one of those corners that went right before him, and J.C. Horner, Patrick Surtain. So this was kind of their next best scenario, and Micah Parsons is the guy that they had graded even higher on their board than those two corners. It just getting a starting corner was a little bit more of a need at that time, but they ended up addressing it in the second round. So, I don't think there's any surprise from anyone that they went 8 out of 11 picks on defense.
I know J.C. Horn's name got a little bit of run late, but I feel like, John, every mock draft that I saw, and maybe you did one that I missed that wasn't this way, but everybody had Patrick Surtain going to 10 at Dallas, and then it didn't unfold that way. Do you think the Cowboys were surprised that he was not available when it got to him, or maybe kind of had some, understanding as things were unfolding that it probably wasn't going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were surprised. I mean, surprise is a relative term here, because were they surprised like maybe I was surprised? No. I mean, because they're going to go through all these different scenarios, and they would have preferred one of those corners, but this is their next best thing. You know, Will McClay was on the radio down here, their vice president of player personnel, a little while ago, and he was just talking about how it felt like to them it was a little bit like the 2014 draft, where they really wanted to get a defender there. They wanted to get Anthony Barr, they wanted to get Aaron Dowler, they wanted to get Ryan Shazier, and several of those picks, including Shazier, went right off the board right before the Cowboys went on the clock, and so they ended up just having to settle for Zach Martin, and obviously that's worked out great for them. He's, perennial All-Pro, Pro Bowler at right guard for them, but this was going to be their contingency plan. Micah Parsons was the next guy up that they were interested in, because they know that they could immediately get him involved on their defense and use him in a variety of ways. But I can't sit here and say that they weren't a little surprised that both those corners went back-to-back. I mean, I could see one going, but for them to go back-to-back right before you went on the clock, they were surprised a little bit.
John, we played the game like everybody else does when you look at first-round picks and you go, this is the guy that's going to be a bust, and this is the guy that's most likely to be a star out of the first round, and kind of taking maybe a quarterback or two out of the mix. So maybe looking for a name. Micah Parsons was my guy that I said, man, this is a 10-year starter in the NFL that's going to go to 4 or 5 Pro Bowls, and he's going to be an All-Pro a couple of times. Am I crazy for thinking that about Parsons?
Oh, no. I mean, he's got the elite athletic ability that's special, and particularly for that position. One of the things that the Cowboys talked about after drafting him is how when they were looking, whether it be Mike McCarthy or talking to Jerry Jones after the draft, when they were looking at edge rushers and who could help them in that area, they felt like Micah Parsons was probably the best in that area of this draft class, just because this draft class didn't have one of those, really unique elite edge rushers in it. It didn't have, a Jadeveon Clowney or the Bosas or Myles Garrett. And so because of that, or Chase Young, because of that, Micah Parsons might be the best pass rusher out of this draft too. And so that's the thing, like, if you draft Micah Parsons, let's say 3 years ago with the Cowboys, I'd say I could see him being like a Pro Bowl player, and I could see him being like one of the better defenders in the NFC East. But with how I expect them to kind of move him around and use him in a variety of ways, including as an edge rusher, blitzing him, something that the Cowboys just haven't done for a long time. If this is a guy that can get you 5, 6, 7 sacks, while also, from the linebacker position, that would be huge, and that will put him right in the conversation for, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. And if it stays that way, and he stays healthy, and he continues to progress as a player, then yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that could be a perennial Pro Bowler. Just it's so tough to project it at that linebacker position for me, because I just look at how many good linebackers have been in the NFL and how many of them had their careers shortened or didn't have the impact nearly that you thought they would, just because of how, for a lack of a better term, dangerous the position is. I mean, it is just, there are so many collisions, there's so many different injuries you can get. Just staying healthy as a good starting linebacker for a decade is impressive, let alone to do it at an elite level. So yeah, the Cowboys think he can do that, but obviously, you got to show it.
Sure. Jon Machota from The Athletic covers the Dallas Cowboys on your radio on the Farm Bureau phone line. Let's flip over to the offensive side, and you can't have a conversation about offense and the Cowboys without talking about Dak and the recovery process. We've seen the videos with the footwork and the quick throws. The Cowboys are saying he's ahead of schedule. What do you know right now about Dak and this long process from that gruesome injury a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, everything seems to be on track, and they have said that they think that he's maybe even a little bit ahead. Mike McCarthy said that a couple of weeks ago. Dak talked yesterday to some reporters talking about if he, absolutely had to play a game today, he could. I know the Cowboys are going to be very cautious with him. Any type of OTA minicamp work is going to be off to the side stuff. They're not going to put him in any situation where there's going to be anybody even running around him, where a potential accident could happen and someone could roll up on his leg or something like that. So I don't think you'll see him going against any serious competition at the earliest until training camp. So you're talking late July. But yeah, he's moving around well now, and he's at the facility, I believe, 4 days a week now. And so, which is probably the most of anybody. And so, yeah, everything's headed in the right direction right now. It certainly doesn't appear to be one of those situations where, when you see a gruesome injury like that, you're kind of sitting there waiting yeah, they can say whatever they want right now, but let's see in a couple of months, and then let's see a couple of months after that. And when you put all that together, it certainly seems like he's on pace to, contribute in training camp, do what he needs to do there, and then be ready to go for week one. And ultimately, after you've seen that injury, if someone would have told you that everything's going to be good, he's going to be ready for week one the next season, you'll take that all day long.
There were times last year without Dak where the offense looked competent and, put some points on the board, threw for a bunch of yards, but it wasn't as consistent as it needed to be. Is there enough there offensively with the return of Dak Prescott, who was playing at a pretty high level before the injury? Is there enough consistency to be where they need to be on the offensive side with all the focus on the defense in the draft?
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. I mean, it's not just Dak, though, on the offense. I would say, before he even went down, it was impressive he was putting up those numbers, considering that he didn't have Lyle Collins, the starting right tackle, who missed the entire season and had to have hip surgery. And then he only had Tyron Smith for 2 games. Because then he went and had a neck procedure, and so he missed 14 games. So just getting those 2 starting right and left tackles back will be a huge bonus for Dak Prescott, and it would have been a huge bonus for whoever was playing quarterback last year, whether it was Garrett Gilbert or Andy Dalton. But yeah, certainly having those guys back. And one of the things I pointed out after the draft was, I'm a big actions speak louder than words guy, and so the words going into the draft were. Everybody within the Cowboys organization was talking about how Lyle Collins and Tyron Smith were healthy, and that they feel like they're going to be good to go, and everything's going to be fine. And I was like, well, I'm looking forward to seeing the actions, and the actions would have been, let's see if they draft an offensive lineman relatively early, and they'll tell you exactly how they feel about that. And they had multiple opportunities in fact, they could have done it in the first round, they could have done it in the second, early in the third. They had 3 picks in the third round, and because they didn't, it gave me the confidence that they must feel, as good as they're saying they do about those 2 guys. Because if you have those 2 guys in, I mean, just look at the Super Bowl. Look how different Kansas City was, without their 2 starting tackles. And,
no doubt.
How Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is, couldn't get anything going as much as, he was trying to be Superman and did a pretty damn good job at it. But still, if you don't have those guys, I mean, everything else falls apart. And I think that also impacted the running game with Ezekiel Elliott. So, you get those 2 guys back with Dak back. I mean, there's certainly enough weapons in the passing game. I mean, their top tight end, Blake Jarwin, he tore his ACL in the season opener and missed the rest of the season. So you're going to have him back. And then, of course, the receivers, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. I mean, they have the capabilities to be 3 1,000-yard receivers. There's just no question about that.
John, last thing, only a little bit less than a minute left. Is this offensive line, if healthy, potentially better than the one that Dak played behind his rookie year?
That'd be tough. I don't know if I'd go that far. And the reason why it is, this would be the telling thing. Of course, it would have the chance, But the biggest thing is that you need all 5 of those guys would have to be playing together for, the majority of the 17 games. There's going to be a nick, a cut, like something here or there that pulls the guy out for a little bit, something that maybe sits him out for a game, something like that, like a minor injury. But if you can have that group together for the most part for, 16, 17, 15, 17 games, then, yeah, I think that it could be, the pieces are there. You don't have Travis Frederick. Tyler Biadasz steps in at center. That's probably your biggest question mark there. But if all the other guys are healthy, it should be one of the better offensive lines in football.
John, great insight today, man. Thanks so much.